Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 183 of the Citrix session. I am your host, Bill Sutton with XenTegra. I have with me a couple of folks from Citrix, like usual, Jeremy Myers and Todd Smith. I almost said Jeremy Smith and Todd Myers. Sorry, guys. Nevertheless, Jeremy, you want to say hello, introduce yourself?
Hola. So I am the lead a group of ATS as account technology strategists here on the East Coast and a smidge of Canada. If you listen from week to week, I'm a regular, if you will.
That's right. And another regular, Todd. Do you want to say hello, introduce yourself real quick?
Yeah, thanks, Bill. My name is Todd Smith, and I guess I should start by saying buongiorno, um, since we're all speaking different languages today.
Yeah.
I'm the account technology strategy leader for the North American public sector team here at Citrix, covering both the United States as well as Canada. And
So that it's interesting. Both of you all, I don't know that I ever really made the connection, are ATS leaders. Why don't one of you, just for the audience that may not know or need a refresher, what is an ATS? What do they
sure,
do at Citrix?
sure. So I can kind of take this, and Jeremy can correct me if I say anything wrong, but an ATS, an account technology strategist, from a Citrix perspective, is someone who is responsible for pretty much the entire technical journey that a customer goes through. Everything from what would be considered pre-sales all the way through the sales processes that happen throughout this life cycle of a customer, um, including things like product adoption, right? So rolling out the products that the customer is buying or subscribing to, as well as being able to support them, throughout their post sales activities until pretty much until their journey with Citrix is over. Um, Covering a variety of different things, right? So some technical sales activities, some technical support and product support, as well as being able to make sure that the customers are extremely successful in utilizing all of the products that they are entitled to, and have that awareness of what's going on. Everything from what's new with Citrix to product features that they're currently not using that they may have a need for. So that's kind of the role of the ATS, is to make sure that the customer's technical journey with Citrix is fulfilling.
You know, that was actually a pretty good summary, Todd. I think Citrix has done this in the past, but it's been a few different kinds of roles. So we've had pre-sales engineers, we've had customer success engineers, we've had TAMs. We've had a few different folks be a part of, that I would say that function, if you will. Um, but I think what's different is now we have an ATS who has some ownership of all three of those things, right? So are they a full-on TAM? No, but there are a few things that are very important. Are they full-on customer success? No, but there is a lot that they're responsible for there. Are they full pre-sales? No, but they are interested in really, looking at ways that we can expand and make the best use of stuff. So, I think within the industry, listen, if you work with Microsoft for a while, ATSs have been a thing there for a long time. I think the idea here is you want to have someone who understands, or at least invests the time to partner and really understand the strategy of a customer and where Citrix can align to that, and how do we support that. Behind the ATS, there are a lot of resources available. So, for instance, we've got support escalation leaders that align to us. We've got product managers and product specialists that align to us. We've got solutions architects and partner ATSs that align to us as well. So as we're working across the ecosystem, so we're working across the product stack, the ATS is, use a firm kind of the quarterback from a strategy perspective, and really should have line of sight into all that's going on with the customer. So it's different, but at the same time, I think, Todd will probably tell you is, being pre-sales entirely in the past. By the way, we've gone off the rails here. We're not even talking about AWS, but we'll get back
Okay,
there.
we'll get there. We'll get there.
Yeah. But from a pre-sales perspective, there were things that Todd and I would be technically support a sale, and then we'd go move on to the next one, especially in the space that we were in, right? So we had a lot of customers. But try to do a handoff to an internal team to either do customer success. Hopefully you bought the TAM service, TRM service. Now it's a little different. We have some ownership over all of those pieces, with the goal being, listen, as a customer of Citrix, we want to make you successful. What does that look like? We'll work with you on that.
Yep. Yep. So yeah, we did go a little outside of the norm, but we often talk about other topics, and I thought it was a good opportunity. It kind of struck me when you guys talked about your roles, even though I already knew them, that there may be folks out there that don't know what an ATS is and what their role is, and most of those customers who are large or even medium sized probably have already had contact with an ATS, but it's historically been the salesperson or AE and the SE. That was the old model, right? And this is a different way of approaching it, and largely driven by the way the products are packaged and sold and the entitlements are laid out, has driven a lot of this, but not all of it, certainly.
I mean, it's less about commercial transactions. I mean, the idea is we have most of our customers have bought in a certain pattern that, man, they may have 2 or 3 or 5 different renewals a year, right? And so I think where we'll land on this is, listen, you have one renewal, maybe that happens every 3 years, maybe it happens every 5 years, depends. Right. But, what do you do along the way? Well, listen, you've got someone on either Todd or myself's team, kind of walking through that with you. And, not just from a technical perspective, but in a lot of cases, our contacts are really trying to socialize the business value across the organization as well, so that, other folks within the business understand exactly what, IT is up to and how they're, providing some value.
Good.
Yeah. And I think, Jeremy, you just hit on a really critical point there is, every single one of our customers is being kind of driven to show business value for every single investment. And the investments can be technology investments. It could be investment in HR capital. It could also be investments in, just think about the amount of office space that's out there. Every business out there, whether it's in the private sector or even the public sector, is being asked to review and show how the business is benefiting from these investments. And that's another key thing that the ATS is helping customers understand. What exactly does this subscription do to drive the success of the business?
Right.
So to bring it home, I think this blog post here and sort of the content that goes along with it is something that I'm sure we'll take to a lot of our customers over the next few weeks, that they understand from a delivery model. The solution we're going to talk about, not new, so to speak. We've been deploying to EC2 for a long time, and last year, Amazon and Citrix, and believe it or not, Microsoft had a say in this as well. Like, there's a very big deal, even though we're talking about Amazon. It's a very big deal from a Microsoft perspective, but they came to market with this last year. This is the Citrix DaaS integration with Amazon WorkSpaces Core. But I heard this described as version 2 today, right. Meaning this has been out for 6 or 8 or 10 months now. There are some updates to it that are pretty significant, actually. That worth calling this a version 2, which is pretty neat.
Yep. So let's get into this. The blog is entitled. It's on the Citrix blog site. It's entitled "Now Available: Citrix DaaS for Amazon WorkSpaces Core Managed Instances," and it's written by Abhilash Verma. Hopefully, I didn't crucify that name, but nevertheless. So, like Jeremy said, this has been Amazon WorkSpaces Core integration with Citrix DaaS has been out for a year, maybe a little bit more. What was referred to as Amazon WorkSpaces Core. And this article talks about, kind of like Jeremy just said, kind of a version 2.0, where it's speaking about Amazon WorkSpaces Core managed instances. So why don't we talk first about what's the difference between those two things, and then we can launch into the details. Anybody want to take that?
Yeah, so I think when we first introduced the integration with Amazon, specifically the workspaces, and more importantly, their WorkSpaces Core capability, right, which is really the focus on Windows operating system for the desktop as well as Windows operating system on the server side. So it really kind of fit into our overall application and desktop delivery piece of it. The 2.0 version of this, which really added in this managed instance capability, right? Which is, I need to have some more robust, dedicated instances that are going to be almost configured specifically for a DaaS environment or a virtual desktop environment. And that was kind of the key there. Um, it's been, a lot of feedback from customers, a lot of feedback from both the AWS engineering teams as well as the Citrix engineering teams, and really kind of filling in the gaps of what we're missing on the 1.0 version, and kind of making sure that that goes into this newly revitalized Amazon Workspaces Core managed instances capabilities to be included with DaaS.
Yes. So, go ahead, Jeremy.
So when you think about it, like the history of quote unquote VDI with Amazon, so they had a solution that was called WorkSpaces, and that WorkSpaces solution was actually two different things. But ultimately, this was a Amazon complete turnkey solution. Right. It was a broker. It was either a VDI or it was application streaming. But either way, that was the original WorkSpaces solution. Or we would give you some EC2 Amazon compute space, and you could do what you wanted with it, right? Which is fine. That's infrastructure as a service. You could either I had customers that were creating entire CVAD environments, just the quote unquote on-prem licensing. They were just putting that in Amazon and running that, as is, which is fine. Or they were taking the Citrix DaaS solution and they were tying that into EC2, and they were treating that almost like a data center, right? Which is also fine. There was a kind of a caveat to that, I think we'll get to in here a little bit, is, man, the Microsoft licensing in that solution was a bit prohibitive. So number one, you couldn't use VDI unless, keep me straight here, you had to do dedicated hosts, I want to say.
That's correct.
So you had to do dedicated host. It made it really tough. I don't even think you could use the Microsoft 365 applications. You had to use the web versions of them. So I don't know
the traditional licensed Office version, that if you could even get that anymore.
Oh, that's right. Almost like the retail version.
LTSC,
I'm gonna go put retail.
The LTSC version.
Yeah. So you had two different solutions. By the way, we had a lot of customers deployed in AWS, right? Solid platform, that's fine. But there were some caveats to think about. Last year, Amazon introduced WorkSpaces Core, and the idea behind that is, listen, I could still tie in, it's API driven, so I could still tie in Citrix DaaS into it. But I think what Amazon did was they said, hey, look, there's a special space in Amazon for WorkSpaces Core workloads. Your DaaS platform, if I'm being very transparent, even though we have a tremendous integration, it's open. So if you're a Horizon customer, you could use that as well. The idea was we're going to open this thing up. The big difference, though, is you could bring your own Microsoft licensing, which was a game changer. So now I could deploy VDI. Now I can deploy the entire Microsoft 365 Office suite, and I could use my own licenses. And Microsoft actually partnered with Amazon on that piece. But it did require you to put your workloads in a very specific location, which was the core space. What's different here is now I can use EC2. I can use my own images. And now this opens up some things like my ability to do image management, right? So now I can use machine creation services, which is insane. So now I have a golden image and I'm creating desktops off this golden image, which is awesome. Still get the Microsoft flexibility, which is also awesome, and non-persistent desktops, which is great. So I don't, if I'm comparing this to what a lot of folks are looking at in Windows 365, that is a persistent desktop hard stop, right? It is what it is. Now they have a few different options, of course, depending on your persona. Do I need a high-end version? Do I need an entry-level version? There's some resources there, but it's a persistent desktop regardless. This is, you can still do your persistent desktops, but this opens up some cost savings around doing, easier management for sure, but I can do non-persistent. So if I have 1,000 users, maybe you only have 500 of these, right? So it's a big difference in terms of how you how you account for the cost here.
Yeah, I know several months ago, Jeremy, we were looking at this for a client, and the client wanted non-persistent, and we, at the time, WorkSpaces Core really only supported a persistent image. You couldn't build, MCS wasn't a thing yet, and I was advised to wait. And sure enough, here we are a few months later, and
The waiting is over.
paid off. Yeah, the waiting is paid off. So I will be going back to that customer now because they ended up pausing it to say this is available. This is available to you because that was obviously a blocker for them, the inability to manage the image and those sorts of things. So that's really the key, or at least a big part of the key of this new offering.
Now, I still have questions. Go
Sorry,
ahead, Todd.
I think the other key here is that it really is talking to our overall approach towards a hybrid multi-cloud environment, right? Where we understand that customers are going to be using AWS, they're going to be using Azure, they're going to be using a variety of other resource locations, right? And this is just yet another extension upon that approach for us to make sure that customers aren't kind of forced into one solution or another.
Right.
So out of the gate, you got MCS, the operating systems that are supported, Windows 11. So this is bringing your own license. Todd,
Right.
why aren't we doing Windows 10? I don't see that one on the list.
Interesting question.
Maybe it's the end of life. So there's a plug for
life is forthcoming. So that's probably why.
There's the plug for the end of life, but Windows Server. So we have a lot of customers who are leveraging Windows Server simply from but actually, this is a really important point. So we talk about AVD when we're talking about doing this in Azure, and a lot of times it's because we have a multi-session OS we want to deploy. We can do Windows 11 multi-session in Azure. We can't do that in AWS.
Right.
That will still be a thing. So if you need multi-session hosts, that'll be a Windows Server, but of course we also support Linux as well. I'm seeing that a lot more, especially from the dev space. So Ubuntu and Debian, which I think they have the same tree at some point.
Yeah, another thing with this, which almost goes without saying, but I think it's important to mention, is that when you leverage like just Amazon Workspaces, not Workspaces Core or Core managed instances, you're using a general protocol to access that. When you're leveraging Workspaces Core with Citrix or Core managed instances with Citrix, which is what we're talking about here, you're getting all that goodness and that rich history of the HDX/ICA protocol. So all of the functionality as a Citrix administrator from a policy engine standpoint, from the standpoint of being able to accelerate and offload certain types of content, all that goodness that we've come to expect and use over the years is available to you in this environment, just as it would be if it were in another cloud or an on-prem environment and managed by Citrix. So you're installing the VDA on these guys, which is enabling that kind of connection, right?
Yep. And you know what? I think we talked about this last week, which was it's pretty common to have a very distributed environment. So
yes,
historically, 2 different data centers, fine. Now all of a sudden you've got this new use case in the cloud you spun up, which is fine. Now you've got maybe your WorkSpaces Core, resources you want to spin up. Like, how do you have a single point of management, right? So director, monitor, studio, configuration. I can do that across clouds,
right,
across managed instances from a single spot, which is a pretty big deal.
Yeah, and not only that, but you also have the tools to measure what productivity looks like, or what reliability and what the overall user experience looks like when you start adding in things like Uber Agent, which doesn't matter what resources you're pulling from. It still looks at it from a user perspective, what their experience is like, what their security looks like. And now all of a sudden you're not having to go to 15 different consoles to gather that information, or have to pull back and look at it from a metadata perspective.
Yeah, and obviously some of the other things that come with this, again, it almost goes without saying, is you get to leverage all the traditional Citrix capabilities like brokering and management, performance monitoring, et cetera. And administrators that are familiar with the Citrix Admin Console or Studio, it's the same. Just like Jeremy was saying, you might have some workloads on prem. You might have some workloads here in Workspaces Core managed instances. You might have some in another cloud, but they can all be managed centrally, monitored centrally. You're not creating pockets of environments that have to be you have different people managing, or you have different behavior in terms of how you access it and how you function within it.
Yeah, the one thing I also think is interesting about this, so we have a lot of customers who come to any sort of VDI application, sort of any EUC solution, is identity, right? What am I
Good point.
logging in with? Like, what identity am I using? The Citrix solution supports a pretty good mix. For instance, it's not uncommon for us to see Okta, and we see Azure AD or Intra ID, I should say, quite a bit now. What's interesting about this solution is not only, obviously, we support AD, but not only do we support Intra ID as a authentication mechanism, even these machines that sit in AWS will support Intra hybrid joined as well. So, for instance, customers are looking to manage, especially their persistent desktops with like Intune, some other solution like that requires, Intra ID as a part of that. This also supports hybrid joined instances.
Oh, cool. Yep. All right. So there's some other elements in this blog that talk about complexity and costs. So we want to talk a little bit about costs associated with this.
I mean, I think the biggest one, and I think we kind of hit on this one, is we're not giving everyone persistent desktops, right? So,
Right.
You asked me a week ago, everyone was getting a persistent desktop. We may have just cut that cost in half because now we can do, MCS provision, non-persistent desktop. So as opposed to 1-to-1, maybe we're 1-to-2, maybe we're 1-to-5. Who knows? It depends on your workflows. But I think there's some immediate cost savings there. In addition to, I think we have probably a more flexible array of image types that we can leverage. So when we think about how do we size these AMIs, we got a lot of options now.
Yeah, I found an article on this topic from AWS that listed kind of the various instance types, and it was significantly more than what I've seen in the past. So clearly, there's a lot more available to administrators and organizations in terms of building out different types of workloads, whether they be traditional task worker or knowledge worker workloads, or all the way up to and including non-persistent workloads for things like CAD and CAM or high resolution audio video, leveraging GPUs. So that capability is available to customers through this solution as well, right?
Yeah, and I think that's a critical point, Bill, is that you've got, it's not a on or off
Right.
binary switch, right? This is something that if you understand the personas and you understand what the requirements are for each of those personas, you can then build a image in your catalog or a configuration within your catalog to match that persona, which means you're going to be able to really dial in exactly what the user is going to need, when they're going to need it, and how frequently they're going to have access to it. That's going to help maintain your costs considerably more than just building a one size fits all and try to solve it that way.
Yeah. Yeah. So the way I see it, this is just another example of Citrix's commitment to expanding the ecosystem of players. You've always had the ability, like you said earlier on, Jeremy, to build environments in AWS, but by leveraging this WorkSpaces Core managed instances, it just expands the family of capabilities. And just another example of Citrix focusing on meeting, like they used to say or still say, meeting you where you are in the cloud journey, whether that's on-prem environment with a failover to the cloud, or it's active workloads in the cloud, or multiple clouds. Just another example of expanding that out here. Wouldn't you agree?
I would agree.
Yeah.
I would agree. The other thing I learned today is Amazon, as you might imagine, very excited about this new version, this new change as well. And if you are interested in doing a POC of this technology, there might be some POC resources available to you from an Amazon compute perspective, even from a WorkSpaces Core perspective. So I would say reach out to XenTegra,
Right.
reach out to your ATS, just to figure out and talk through what those options are.
Yeah. Yeah, and another thing I'll say is we actually have one of these that is in progress or about to be in progress with a large company leveraging the funding programs that Citrix has available to customers. to do WorkSpaces. It was originally WorkSpaces Core. It will probably pivot now to a part of it being managed instances, I would imagine,
Yep.
from the customer's requirements. So I certainly expect it to flip a little bit towards this. But the bottom line is that there is funding available for customers that want to do things like this and other things. Just reach out to your ATS or XenTegra. We can help you with that. Any final thoughts on this topic, guys? I think we've gotten through it all, or most of it.
I think the big thing is that, the flexibility and the understanding that there's a lot of customers and a lot of users are migrating towards better capabilities that are readily available to do things like leverage HDX to do the high-end graphics workloads, leveraging a lot of the adjacent compute power that's required for doing things like AI, and especially things like generative AI, or supporting a variety of different high-end, high-value use cases that oftentimes with that high-end, high-value came high-priced. And really looking at it from a perspective of how do we manage costs, how do we deliver the best experience to the user, and more importantly, how do we make sure that we're getting what we're paying for?
Absolutely. So what I would say is at the bottom of the blog article, there is a reference to documents and to a deployment guide on TechZone. So for those of you listening that are interested, take a look at that. You need help, we can certainly step in and help as need be. I think this primary article is just WorkSpaces Core, but setting it up from a DaaS perspective is probably the same or very similar. And I'm sure there'll be some updates to this if they haven't already been made relative to WorkSpaces Core managed instances. Jeremy, any final thoughts?
The last thing I'll tell you is the one thing I think we forgot to hit on when it comes to cost management is we have a lot of customers who do have commits with Amazon for compute.
Yep.
And to that point, Amazon has the concept of AWS savings plans. So if you're willing to commit to a certain amount of compute, you actually get a better deal on compute as well. So yeah, I would say reach out to XenTegra, reach out to your Amazon rep if you got one to talk through where that plays into this as well, because don't play retail when you could pay discount, right? So, if you're going to have spend in AWS and about what it's going to be a month, you can probably get a better deal on what that compute looks like if you commit to it. So
great.
That was my last bit. Yeah.
Great. Thanks. All right. That's it for today, guys. Thanks for your participation, and we'll see everybody listening next time.
All right.
Thank you.
See you guys next week.
All later.